Welcome to the Craig Dallas Rice Show. Today we're going to be talking about the League of Conservation Voters. And today I have the League of Conservation Voters New Hampshire State Director, Rob Werner. Welcome to the show, Rob.
Thanks, Craig. I'm really glad to be here.
Great. Hey, can you tell us a little bit, I always ask my guests, how you got involved with the League of Conservation Voters and what are you doing with them?
Okay. Well, how I got involved personally is that from an early age, I was very interested in environmental issues and environment in general. I went to summer camp in New Hampshire as a youngster up on Newfound Lake. And I think the values that I learned there and the skills that I learned there about being able to take care of oneself in the woods and those kinds of things, and appreciation for the national environment really has carried through to the rest of my life. So I always had a interest in environmental issues. And about 4.5 years ago, there was an opportunity to work here in New Hampshire with the League of Conservation Voters to lead our efforts in terms of climate change action. And so what we do in New Hampshire is that the mission of LCV is to turn environmental issues into local, state, and national priorities. And there's a whole variety of ways that we do that on the local and state level, and certainly national level, that we can talk about.
Okay. Before we get into talking about it any further, I would like to play a video that I found on YouTube, and it's put out by the League of Conservation Voters. So if we could take a look at that video.
Okay.
I experienced the effects of climate change firsthand in Nevada.
See every day the vestiges of climate change and global warming and sea level rise. We can do nothing, we can be quiet, and eventually just be covered up by water, or we can raise our voices.
The power in this country has and always will be with the people.
This is an historic moment. We've never been under greater threat. And LCV and our 2 million members across the country are all in to make sure we fight President Trump and make progress in the states. We've got state partners, and they're on the front lines of making progress. Defend nationally, make progress in the states, and LCV is a great organization to help make that happen. We have a scorecard. We make sure we keep score and let the public know how our representatives do and our senators do on the key issues of our time.
The LCV scorecard is the environmental conscience of Congress.
For those who don't have folks' best interests at heart, you will be held accountable.
States are showing the nation what's possible on climate, and they're leading the way.
States are really laying the groundwork for our nation's success.
We know that if we want movement on climate in states, that we've got to take action and get folks elected who are going to lead, sponsor bills, and pass legislation that's proactive on climate.
We have a national network of people all committed to the same thing, sharing resources, sharing knowledge, and really building a movement that's going to change the country and the world.
This administration is focused on breaking communities down. We're focused on building bridges between communities and not walls.
Our communities are not going to be quiet at a moment like this. People are getting organized.
We do rallies, we do phone banks, we organize citizens around the country.
LCV is a membership organization, and we have incredible members all across the country who really care so much about protecting the environment.
One of the important programs within the League of Conservation Voters is Chispa, which works with Latino families in cities across the country.
In Spanish, it literally translates over to spark. The objective is to spark or ignite the movement on climate justice in our communities.
We work to elect environmental champions up and down the ballot, from the State House to the White House, to ensure that we can really make the progress that we need to protect the environment and especially to fight climate change.
I won by 1,782 votes, and what LCV did in terms of voter mobilization was worth way more than 1,782 votes.
The Give Green program, my gosh, it was such an important boost to my campaign. Believe me, it made a difference in my race, and I will always be appreciative.
When I decided to run for Congress, we had no endorsements. We had no prominent names on our list. So when LCV came in, it lent a lot of credibility and a lot more respect to our campaign.
At the end of the day, it's about getting more people who care about the environment, to make sure they get out and vote. And there's some good TV ads, some good radio ads, but it's really that door-to-door talking to people on their doorstep saying, you need to vote for us and for our candidates. And that's what makes the critical difference, and that's what we do well.
People should never doubt the power of their voice and the power of their vote, and now is the time more than ever to exercise both.
There's a lot of great environmental organizations, but in terms of advancing a pro-environmental mindset among policymakers, I think LCV is definitely the best.
I chose to be on the board of the League of Conservation Voters because one of the most important things I can do as an active environmentalist is help get other environmentalists elected to office.
LCV is an incredible partner to work with because it puts its money where its mouth is. If you think about the advancements that we've made in Congress around electing champions for the environment, LCV has been on the forefront of that.
I love LCV because LCV understands people and politics, and that together we can build our collective power. And that is how long-term change happens.
Rob, that was an excellent video, and it was put out by LCV, obviously.
Yes.
Let me ask you, I know that, that you had just recently come back from some event in San Francisco, and you're also involved with, you know, the state of New Hampshire activities. I mean, tell me a little bit about what's been going on with your work with LCV.
Well, I think to jump off from the video, part of the theme of the video is defend, advance, build. So we need to defend our current environmental laws. We need to advance new laws and really work with folks both on the federal and state levels to make sure that we can protect our environment. And we need to build our political power to hold elected leaders accountable for their decisions. So that package altogether, those the way those interplay is really important, and I think it is what makes LCV unique amongst the environmental organizations that are in the country and operating here in New Hampshire as well. So I did come back recently from San Francisco. The Global Climate Action Summit was held there the week of September 9th, and it was a program that was put forward by Governor Jerry Brown. He announced this last summer, a year ago. In part a response to the Trump administration's decision to, or announcement to withdraw the United States from the Paris Climate Agreement. It's important to note that we are not formally withdrawn from the Paris Climate Agreement. Under the agreement, we actually as a country cannot withdraw from it immediately. It's a process. We actually can't formally withdraw from that agreement until 10 days after the 2020 election. So I think, you know, obviously this administration doesn't support our participation in that. They've undermined it. They've retreated on things like the Clean Power Plan, first effort to reduce carbon emissions from coal-fired power plants on a national basis. And incidentally, you know, it was very important to have the Clean Power Plan in place when the Obama administration went to Paris, because we were able to put something on the table within those negotiations to say, this is what we are doing. We make this commitment to head in this direction and to stick to it. Now, obviously, there was an election and a change of administration and a change of view, but that doesn't mean that there's not an awful lot of people around this country that still support that agreement, the values of that agreement, and the spirit of that agreement, and are working to implement that at least on the local and state level in many cases.
Right, and I did notice, because I did read the mission statement, and I won't go into it in too much detail, but it says that the primary concern is global climate change.
Yes.
And so I'm sure that you guys are working to educate voters and to mobilize so that you can get people elected that will keep us in the Paris climate, what is it called, the Paris Climate Agreement? Yes.
Yes.
Right. I mean, it's very, it's a crucial time right now.
It is, and I think the significance of that agreement, it wasn't perfect. There's a lot of work to do to make sure that countries stick to it, but there's opportunities, including an international meeting under the United Nations this December in Poland that will continue to press ahead on that and to make sure that the ambition that countries have committed to is maintained. Those conversations are happening all the time amongst leaders. But what I found heartening about coming back from the San Francisco conference was that there was a large group of cities that are really pushing ahead. There are over 400, almost 450 mayors now that are part of something called Climate Mayors. And what that is that mayors, including most of the mayors here in New Hampshire now, we've been working with them to bring them onto this agreement, including Mayor Lane here in Keene,
Great.
Mayor Boulay in my home city of Concord, have signed on to this commitment to say we uphold the principles of the Paris Agreement. We will work with our city councils and folks in our communities to develop climate action plans, to do practical things like develop solar in our communities, to take our energy future and put it into our own hands and control our own destiny around energy. And it's all part of, I think, a mosaic and a large movement of folks saying, I want to do something on the local level that means something to people here in our communities.
Right. And it is important to have a grassroots movement that can last. And sometimes it's a waiting game, I think. In a way, I mean, the current administration doesn't seem to care as much about the environment as many folks, including myself, would like. And we still got a couple more years. We got to deal with that. But you don't want to, if you don't do anything, it could easily turn into another 4 years. So we don't want that.
That's right. And there are projects that are happening all over the state in terms of renewable energy. It was unfortunate that the recent legislation that the governor vetoed to increase our net metering cap was not overridden in the legislature. That has real effects on the ability of communities to take the most advantage of the opportunity and to be able to capture that power for their own communities on a net metering basis, which is important. But I'm confident that next year in the legislative session, we'll get back to that issue, and there's very strong bipartisan support for that policy. So I'm looking forward to the next session of the legislature. Obviously, we have an election in between. There'll be a lot of new people, and we'll see after the election where we can work with folks on both sides of the aisle to move these issues forward for the folks in New Hampshire.
Right. And you are right there, and you're based out of Concord.
Yes.
The state capital. So
yes.
I guess you must lobby and
we do. We spend time
with
in the legislature, particularly on issues like strengthening our regional greenhouse gas initiative, which New Hampshire is part of, with 9 and soon to be 11 other states on the East Coast, that has had the effect of reducing carbon emissions since 2009 by almost 50%.
50%?
Yes, in the Northeast region.
That is remarkable.
And the RGGI program, produces revenue through carbon trading that states then use to invest into energy efficiency projects, which really benefits us all because the cheapest unit of energy is the one that is not used in the first place. So
explain that to me, would you please? Okay.
Well, it's like reducing demand. It's reducing demand. So if you have a very efficient community in terms of, tight buildings and very efficient operations, you are actually reducing your energy costs. And in New Hampshire, that has a direct effect on our citizens. For municipalities, I serve on the City Council in Concord, chair our Energy Committee, and one of the things that I always make the point of is that being ever more energy efficient has the effect of reducing our energy bill for the city, which in turn has an effect of giving us a greater ability to control property taxes, which is obviously for New Hampshire is our primary way of raising revenue for local communities. So that's really important.
Yeah.
And the other aspect that I think is really encouraging is that both the global market and United States market around the demand for renewable energy It is growing very rapidly. Renewable energy sources are becoming very competitive in terms of price with oil and natural gas, particularly solar. And we need to continue to invest and support those policies that will result in greater adoption of renewable energy and particularly solar. I think that is a strong path for us here in New Hampshire.
Right. I've always heard that that the like for instance alternative energy source manufacturers, they're not very subsidized by the government. Has that been changing in recent years?
Well, there are subsidies, and in fact, I like to use not necessarily the term alternative. I like to use clean energy or renewables because it is very much becoming mainstream in terms of the amount of renewable energy coming online compared to traditional sources that we're used to. There are some subsidies. I mean, there are tax credits and so forth. But let's not forget, over many, many decades, fossil fuel industry has been subsidized to a fair amount, a very large amount as well. So, you know, for those who say, well, we shouldn't have subsidies, what's this all about supporting the development of renewable energy through tax credits and so forth, they often forget that there is another side of the equation in terms of the historical subsidy of the fossil fuel industry.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's true. You know, it's a pretty short show, so I want to make sure you get a chance at some point to, you know, tell the audience, you know, how they can get involved with the League of Conservation Voters and why they would want to.
Well, I think, you know, again, I think we're a unique organization in that we do a lot of policy work. We're well regarded in Washington and in the states and here in New Hampshire. But we also do get involved in the political process because at the end of the day, you can have good policy and put good policy forward, yet if you do not have the leaders in legislative positions to implement those policies, you're not going to make the progress that we need to make in order to lick this problem of climate change and move along in a good path for our state and our nation. There are many ways to get involved. We do a lot of events around the state in terms of bringing attention to the impacts of climate change, whether that's sea level rise on the seacoast, the impact on our maple sugar industry here in the Monadnock region or up north, the really unfortunate impacts on our wildlife, such as moose in terms of the proliferation of winter ticks. Our streams are warming, so our trout is affected. There's a lot of different things going on. We're having more frequent and powerful storms. We've all experienced that recently.
Right.
You know, the Northeast is going to get hotter and wetter. So there's a lot to worry about. But I am optimistic in the face of all this. I still think that we have time to act, and there are ways that people can act in terms of making sure that their local officials and their state legislators make the right decisions, are held accountable. We involve many folks around New Hampshire around specific bills in the legislature, around specific initiatives. You know, Concord, we passed a 100% renewable energy resolution. It's in a recent publication that was put out by the Sierra Club, and Keene is not far behind. There are a lot of folks here in Keene that are working on much the same thing, to make a commitment to the community. We want to be 100% renewable energy by 2050, electricity by 2030, thermal and transportation by 2050, and we want to do it in a very community-based way. And this is happening in multiple municipalities around the state. And there's a lot of opportunity for people to get involved in efforts like that to make a difference in their own communities.
Absolutely. I actually had Councilman Terry Clark on, and he is a real champion.
He
in this
is.
community.
He's a good friend and very much a champion.
Yeah, so
I admire him greatly.
Yeah, he's doing a lot here. I also, you know, I know that in the state of New Hampshire, you know, we seem to have a pretty good amount of people who care about the environment.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that you'll have people knocking on your door in Concord soon, trying to join up with the League of Conservation Voters. I think it's great. I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard of like legislation getting into some committee and then it dies there. It dies there because there's no political, you know, not enough numbers of people who are trying to champion those causes. So you guys are doing a lot of good work.
Well, thank you. We work with a lot of allies, different environmental organizations, different organizations that range from the New Hampshire Council of Churches to business folks who do care about this. I think that's another aspect that gives me some hope in terms of the business community and realization that this is an economic opportunity in terms of moving towards renewable energy, job creation. And we need to grab this opportunity. There are a lot more people who are coming to that view, so that's encouraging.
It is encouraging. Well, we're coming to a close of the time we have, and I would like to just remind the viewers, like, can you tell them how to get in touch with you, like how to find you on the
Sure,
internet?
you can go out to our national website, lcv.org, and you can find out more about us there, and then we will be visible in New Hampshire, have been, and will continue to be visible in New Hampshire around the state, doing events at fairs and festivals, and we do mobilize our members to talk to their legislators as well. We have many members in the Monadnock region. So.
Well, I found you by just looking up League of Conservation Voters on Google. I found it right away. Yeah. Well, listen, I have to close this out now. I would like to thank you once again, Rob Werner,
Craig,
for coming on the show. And here's a video from the archives of when I was playing down in Texas with my brother's band at the R-Bar Ranch in the studio there. So hope you enjoyed this video. It's Rockin' in the Free World.